Today I'm going to show you an easy way to make your own super attractive DIY wood screens that just happen to be historically accurate. You don't need any expensive woodworking tools, just a few basic items I've linked to in the description below, and you'll be ready to roll. Get ready to enjoy the fresh air, and here we go! The first thing I'm going to do is cut this 1x6 cypress and 1x4 cypress to length to fit my window opening. You might recognize some of this footage from my earlier video DIY wood storms because it's basically the same process to start with. I'm going to set the fence on my table saw to 1 11/16, which should allow me to rip these 1x4s almost in half. I just have to trim off a little bit of extra. Then I'm going to rip one piece out of the 1x6 to 1 11/16 and then change my fence over to 1 inch. This is going to be cutting the meeting rail on my storm window or on my screen. And then what I'm left over with is the bottom rail for the screen. Take it over to your assembly table, line everything up where it should be. You got the wider piece at the bottom, the meeting rail is 1 inch, and the top and sides are 1 11/16. Now I'm transferring the measurements I took on my window onto my screen of where the meeting rail should go. You want them to line up. Now sometimes you can make a mortise and tenon screen, or you can use corrugated fasteners. There's a lot of different ways you can join this together. Since this is a DIY screen, I figured using Craig's pocket hole jig, the K4, would be an awesome and user-friendly way to get this done. Hooking up a vacuum to it, you'll notice there's no wood chips or sawdust. It makes it super easy. The way I've found to do it on these storms and screens I make is on the bottom rail, I can do the 2 wider holes, and on the meeting rail I just do 1 on each side. On the top one I do the 2 closer holes, like right here. And once you get this set up, it's real easy to join everything together with no problems out in the weather as well. Once you've got all your holes drilled, clamp everything together to make sure it's in the right place, and put your pocket hole screws in place. You'll always want to clamp it so that it doesn't wander around. The next step is using a exterior wood glue. I'm using Titebond 3 here, and putting dowels to fill in the pocket holes. You want to make sure you got plenty of glue and you get a lot of good squeeze out. Hate for these to come loose later. Put it both in the hole and on the dowel so that you make sure you get good contact all around. After the glue's had about 4 to 6 hours to dry, you can leave it overnight if you have the time. Just come through and use a flush cut saw to trim off the excess. And then I just come through and sand everything smooth so that you don't see it at all. I took that opportunity now to sand all sides of this with an 80 grit sandpaper. You want to get everything that you can, make sure it's all perfectly ready for primer and paint. And then I prefer an oil-based primer for wood products going outside. I feel like it gets better adhesion. You can top coat it with either an oil paint or a latex paint. I'm not going to show you the painting process, but brush it on, spray it on, however you want to get it on. Make sure you're just covering all sides of it. Once you've got it primed and painted, it's time to put your screening on. I'm using fiberglass screening here, but you can also use aluminum or bronze, and I'm going to attach it with 1/4 inch stainless steel staples and just a regular old manual staple gun. The trick for this is you want to make sure you're pulling the screen tight as you go along. You want to have it where you could basically bounce a quarter off of it once it's done. I tend to start at the top, work down one side, pull it down, and then pull it taut as I work on the other side, like you can see here. Afterward, come through with a hammer and any staples that didn't get hit down flush. You want to make sure that they're all sunk properly. Now it's time for screen mold. I'm using standard stock screen mold. You can use whatever you want on here, half round, 1/4 round, anything that you find attractive, and just measure it to fit around there. Mark your measurements, and you're going to cut nice beveled angles for everything to go around your screen. This is going to cover the staples you'll see in just a sec. You'll want to get a coat of primer and paint on your screen mold before you attach it. It's much easier to do beforehand. Once you've got it all cut, lay it out on your screen where everything should go. And this is really not to hold the screening in place, but just to make it look more attractive, give it some depth, and hide those staples. I use an 18 gauge brad nailer with just 3/4 inch nails so that I'm not going through or blowing out the backside. Get the corners lined up and then move your way along. Once your screen mold is attached, grab a razor knife and trim off the excess screening. Be careful not to dig too deep into the wood, but just cut off what's extra. And then I use some painter's putty to fill any of the nail holes. You can smooth it out with your finger. It's a great product, that way you don't have to sand anything. Once you've got the painter's putty cleaned up, you're going to want to come through and just touch up the paint on the top of your screen mold. Don't get it onto the screening. That's why we had to paint it earlier. The hardware we're going to use to hang the screens is the same hardware they've been using for a little over 100 years. These are Stanley screen and storm hangers. You can use these for screens or storms. You put one at the top of each side, the right and left, and then you'll see how it works when we get on site. I also like to paint this hardware, believe it or not. It helps it blend in better. Paint this the color of the screen, and you paint the other piece the color of the trim. Alright, here we are in my backyard, and here is the window that's going to get this screen. Here's the other part of the hardware that the screen hangs on. This goes on the trim above the window. It's a very simple hook system. I've removed the old hardware because it wasn't lined up properly, and I'm using this new hardware, which is basically the same. You can see the old stuff there to the left. Now I'm just marking where each one should go, and then I'm going to take it down and screw these into the trim. Once they're screwed in place, take your screen and hook it onto the hardware. Looking good. Now you notice the bottom won't stay shut. We're going to have to put one more piece of hardware down here to fix that. I'm going to use a simple hook and eye. The hook is going to go on the back side of the screen, just like this. You screw it in place, and the eye is going to go into the windowsill. Make sure you line it up, mark where the eye should go so everything fits properly. And then sometimes it's easier to pre-drill it just a little bit and put your eye in place. I like to do one on each side of the screen or storm for extra security and holding power. This makes sure nobody can come in and take the screen or storm off from the outside. And there you have it, a DIY window screen fit for any old house. Don't forget to check out the description for all the tools and materials you'll need to build this yourself. For more projects like this, be sure to subscribe to my channel by clicking the logo in the center of the screen there, and check out the other great videos I have to help you DIY better.